So for the rest of this video, I'm going to be demonstrating more workouts for the lower body as well as some for the core. So the first one is an exercise that works the hamstrings called the hip thrust. So as I said before, COVID-19, I don't have access to my gym right now. I'm going to use this as a makeshift bench, and this is my bar. So for the hip thrust, what you do is you find yourself a bench, one that is not going to move on you. Hopefully one that is bolted to the ground if your gym has that sort of thing. I've just got mine against the door here. What you do is you find a place on the bench to rest your lower back against, or upper back, sorry. So you've got your upper back there, you've got your weight right here, right sort of in the crotch region. You've got an even grip on your weight, and usually you'll have plates on either side of the bar. You find a good place to cement the weight, your feet, and you're lifting up at the hips. You're creating a straight line between your knees and your shoulders and going back down, keeping the back completely straight as per usual, and making sure that you're cemented the whole time. And that's an exercise that's meant to work the hamstrings. In a gym, you'd have better equipment to use. It's not exactly so comfortable with the hard plastic. So the next one we're going to do is the calf raise. And what the calf raise does is it exercises plantar flexion in the calf. And plantar flexion is basically this motion. So what you'll usually do is you'll have a pair of dumbbells that you use, and if you see my feet right here, there's a number of ways to do this. You can do this also with a leg press, but what I'm going to demonstrate is just with steps because it's a very simple workout to do. So if you're stepping with about half of your feet onto the step, and you may have like dumbbells in either hands, or even a weighted vest sometimes works. And all it is just raising yourself up. There are also machines that work this, keeping your shoulders straight in line with your back as well. Just simple plantar flexion under the stress of a weight. That's all that one is. So for the next one, we're going to do the plank. And that's an exercise, that's a core exercise. And core exercises, of course, are important to other weightlifting exercises such as squats and bench press and deadlifts. Because they're the foundation of being able to lift the weight, basically. And what the plank does, it exercises the erector spinae, the rectus abdominis, and the transverse abdominis. So when doing the plank, you're going to want to find a comfortable sheet to lay down on. And you start in a prone position. What I like to do is just put my arms into a V, like so. Have my head above my fists. Raise yourself up. So it's a plank, so you've got your feet completely in line with your spine. Your spine is completely straight. A lot of people, it's a position you have to hold, so it's an isometric exercise. A lot of people have a problem going up during the plank or going down because you get more tension as you do the exercise more. But it's best just to hold it straight as possible when doing the exercise, holding it for about a minute. It's an isometric exercise as mentioned, so it works your core in that way. An exercise not to do if you have hypertension, as it is an isometric exercise, you don't do those. Or if you're a woman who's pregnant, you don't do isometric exercise. So that's another great core exercise. And then the next one we have is the rack pull, and that's one of the back exercises. That's to work the erector spinae. So with the rack pull, basically what it is the upper half of a deadlift. So the reason it's called a rack pull is because the bar just sits on a rack up about here. And as I was saying, it's the upper half of a deadlift that you're doing. So even grip on the bar, as always. You're holding it about here, starting with your back completely straight. Slight bend in your knees, like you're about halfway through a deadlift. And all you're doing is lifting it up. And as with a deadlift, you've got, you're not locking the knees, but you've got a slight flex in the front, in the crotch region around here, and putting it back down, up like that, and back down. So as you see, it's not using the legs as you usually do in a deadlift, but only using the very upper part of the lift, which works the erector spinae. Now for the next lift, we have the dumbbell chest fly. And this one is a good exercise to work the deltoids and the chest. So what you do is you'll have two dumbbells and finding a bench again. As with the bench press as well, spreading your feet apart, finding a good base to balance yourself. You'll have the two dumbbells. You'll be in the position for a bench press. Have two dumbbells, each at your side like this. As you'll notice, I don't have my joint locked here. I have a slight bend in my elbow. Lifting them all the way up to the top and then back down. With an even lift, always keeping that slight bend in the elbows. You don't always have to lift them all the way up to the top. You'll find it's very easy once you get up here, but at least lifting all the way up to about here. That's a great way to exercise the deltoids, the pecs, and the pectoralis minor with that exercise. Now, the next one would be the incline bench. And this is another chest exercise. It works what's called the clavicular head of the pectoral muscles, which is basically the upper part of the pectoral muscles and the anterior deltoids. And it's almost completely similar to the bench press. I'll demonstrate it from the side. So, again, like before, finding a good base for your feet. And with this one, you're on an incline. So, obviously I can't demonstrate it with like a completely straight back, but you're about this much and on an incline. That might be adjustable given your bench. You've got the bar about this high after you've taken it off the rack. And it's just like a normal bench, having an even grip with your hands, but I prefer to have it a quite wide grip. And just lifting it above your head, then back down about an inch above the nipple line, maybe a bit higher with the incline bench, and back up and down, never locking your elbows at the top of the lift, always having a slight bend as to not prevent any strain on the joint. And just like so. It's an exercise just like the bench. It exercises the pecs, but more the upper portion, the clavicle head of the pectoral muscles. The next one would be the deadlift, which for the back, it exercises the lats, the erectors, the erector spinae, the trapezius, and the rhomboids. It also does exercise a lot of the lower body muscles, such as the gluteus maximus and the hamstrings. But I'm doing it for the purpose of a back workout. You'll start out in a similar position to the bottom of a squat, and that's when you're grabbing your bar with your hands in a pronated position. A lot of people, when they're doing the heavier weight, will have one hand in a prone, one hand in a supine position, just to have a bit more balance on the bar. That's when you're getting a bit more heavy. Decently wide grip, having your feet shoulder width apart. I do prefer to have them a bit further in shoulder width just for balance, and in doing so I have my feet a bit angled as well. But you're starting in a squat position, bent down, knees just hovering above the toes, grabbing the bar. Then you have your back completely straight the whole time. Looking forward is a great way to do it. Bringing it all the way up to a standing position. One common problem people have is locking their knees, and that's something they have on the squat, but also on the deadlift. At the end of the lift, you're having a bit of a bend at the front, at the lower body in the crotch area. Just a slight bend, then bringing it back down, repeat. And the bar will tend to stay in its place for most of the lift. And you'll notice that you start off in the squat. Once you get up to here, it's pretty much the same deal as the lift I was discussing earlier. The rack lift, where you're just bringing it up. That's pretty much the top of the deadlift. But in this one, you're bringing it all the way down from the ground to the top. One of the essential lifts of weightlifting. So that's another great one for the back. Does a lot more to exercise those back muscles than the squat, although it is similar to the squat in a lot of ways. So the next one that we will demonstrate is a bent over row, and that works the lats and the rhomboids. So for bent over row, just as with the rack pull, it's a good idea to have the bar on the rack in the first place. So approaching it with an even grip on the bar, and you'll find those circles that I discussed earlier are usually on them. Obviously this isn't an actual bar, but they'll usually have it. So starting off with the bar, bringing it up, step back from the rack. So you'll have it, so you've got your knees in a slight bend, not necessarily hovering over your toes as you're not in a full squat. Then you'll bend at the hip, not at the back. So that's the reason it's called the bent over row, right? So you'll have the bar about here, and just lifting the bar up, exercising those lats. That's where you're gonna really feel the burn in this, I find. So showing it from the side view, there's no bend in my back whatsoever. The only bend is at the hips, as usual, separating the lower and the upper body, and also the knees, of course. And just lifting it. Your arms are not going outwards, they're going more inwards into the back when doing this lift. And it's working the latissimus dorsi a lot. So now, the next lift that we're going to do is the leg press. And this one works the quads and the hamstrings. So when demonstrating this one, it's hard to find any equipment that will really simulate it, so we're just going to have to use our imaginations. Usually you're at a similar position to what you have with a similar starting position to the hip flexion and the incline bench. You're just inclined, sitting down pretty close to the floor. You'll have usually a large metal pad to put your feet against. It is also, I was demonstrating the calf raise earlier, it is also a piece of equipment you can use the calf raise for. So usually you'll have plates on the side, or the machine might have a weight where you can just change the weights. But mine that I usually use has plates on either side. And also emphasizing it is important to unrack your weights after you use them. A lot of people, they might not want to use the machines but not be able to lift the plates that you use. So common courtesy in the gym, always important. Usually you'll have 2 bars that you're holding at the side. Very important to hold them, as it is essentially a lift that's squishing your body in a sense, and you don't want to be unbalanced in any way. So you're holding these bars at the side, and when you're lifting, you'll usually, with this one, you'll start at the very top of the weight, and you'll unlock it from there. And so your starting position is basically at the top of the lift. It's one of those lifts. You want to make sure, because of that you are not locking your knees at all, because if you're just wanting to rest at the top, that's something that you would do, and that's putting a lot of pressure on your knees and bending them back quite a bit, especially if your knees are hyperextended like mine. You want to make sure you always have that slight bend. So starting, going just about, you don't want to go too far with this one, because it can crack your ribs if you have your legs going all the way back, or your knees going all the way back. We want to bring it to about here, then push it back up. You really don't want to emphasize the leg press though. You don't want to go too far back. Anything further than that, you're not really exercising your muscles too much than you already have. But that's another great one to emphasize, to work the quads and the hamstrings. Similar to the squat in a lot of ways. So the next one that we'll do is the flutter kick, which is another core workout, which works the lower abs, the glutes, the hip flexors, the quads, and the adductors. So it's a good all-around lower body workout. And obviously it's not one that you use with weights. So it's not really a weight exercise, but as I've said before, core is important to weightlifting. So with your hands, you're going to want to keep them square under your butt. Laying down supine, you want to put your legs about 45 degrees up, and you basically do kicks, making sure that your feet are about 6 feet off the ground on the bottom of each kick. And it's an exercise where you've basically got that motion going the whole entire time. 1 rep is basically 1, 2, so 2 kicks for 1 rep. So when people say, I want 20 flutter kicks, it's not going like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's more like 1, 2, 3, 4. I am doing it with my head up, but it's usually better just to keep your body completely straight for this. That maintains balance, and it also keeps your core completely straight, which we always want. The last one that I'll demonstrate is the oblique twist, and that's going to, it's going to exercise the external and internal obliques, and also the rectus abdominis. So usually you'll have a medicine ball in your hand, and what you're going to do is you're going to sit. Try to avoid sitting on your tailbone for this one. It is a hard one to do in the sense that it requires a lot of balance, but it's just one of those workouts where you got to practice the technique a bit before you do it. So you're on your butt, both your upper torso and your legs are in the air, and you can have a medicine ball and you're just twisting. Some people will also do a bit of a flutter kick at the same time when you're twisting. It's important not to emphasize that twist, because a lot of that puts pressure on the lumbar area of your spine, and you don't want that. But all you're wanting to do is twist until you feel that burn in the oblique area. And there are a few exercises that exercise the obliques, but that's a really important one to do. Okay, so that is it. A lot of great upper body and lower body exercises. As usual, technique is the most important thing, so we want to emphasize starting on technique before we build on weights. Even, I've been doing weightlifting for a fair amount now, and I'll go back to a lower weight just to get parts of my technique that I find are lacking. I find even when I squat, if I start going heavier, I'll have problems where my knee starts to cave in a bit like that. That can lead to some really bad health issues. For that reason, I've started putting my feet a bit outwards. And my squat, I've still got my knees hovering above my toes. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.